Her adoptive family tied her to a post and called her a failure until her billionaire husband arrived. Imagine being tied to a fence by the family that was supposed to love you, called a failure and a curse every single day. That was Emily's life until the day her billionaire husband arrived and uncovered a truth no one expected. This is a story of betrayal, survival, and the power to reclaim your destiny. In the small, dusty town of Rock Hill, Kansas, a woman's scream echoed across the barren fields behind the Miller family barn. 22-year-old Emily Grace had been tied to a rusted fence post by her adoptive family, her arms scraped, her legs trembling. Her hair was tangled, her clothes tattered, and her tears were dried by the harsh wind that rolled in from the plains. "You're a disgrace," sneered Charlene Miller, her adoptive mother, holding a leather belt like a trophy. "We took you in, fed you, and you still turned out useless." Emily didn't speak. She couldn't. Not because she didn't have the words, but because she learned that speaking only made things worse. Charlene's sons, Troy and Duke, stood nearby, laughing and filming on their phones. "Post this," Duke chuckled. "Let the world see the town's adopted curse." They always called her that, the curse, because bad things seemed to follow the Millers ever since they adopted her from a foster home 15 years ago. Crops failed, debts piled, and neighbors whispered. Of course, none of it was her fault, but in their minds, she was the easy scapegoat. As the sun dipped lower and the sky turned crimson, Emily closed her eyes and whispered a silent prayer. Not for herself, but that someone, someday, would believe her story. What she didn't know was that someone was already coming. 3 hours away in a sleek silver car driving down a rural highway, a man was checking his GPS. Jordan Pierce, 32, self-made billionaire and founder of a biotech startup in Austin, Texas, had been driving all day. He hadn't told anyone where he was going. Not his assistant, not his security detail, and definitely not the press. But he had a reason. He had a wife, and she was missing. Not kidnapped, not dead, just wiped from her own story. He clenched the steering wheel tighter as her voice echoed in his head, the last voicemail she left before she disappeared 2 years ago. "If anything happens to me, Jordan, find the old barn behind the Miller farm. That's where the truth lives." Jordan Pierce drove into Rock Hill just after sunset, headlights slicing through the eerie silence of the town's abandoned streets. It was the kind of place where time stood still, where people still left their doors unlocked and whispered gossip at the church potluck. But underneath its charm, Rock Hill hid things. Ugly things. He parked outside the only diner still open, Maggie's Grill, to ask for directions to the old Miller farm. The bell jingled as he stepped inside, drawing a few tired eyes from a booth in the back. The woman behind the counter looked up from her notebook, visibly startled when she saw him. "You ain't from around here," she said flatly. "I'm looking for the Miller farm. Know where it is?" Her smile vanished. "What business you got with them?" "It's personal," he said carefully. "Family." The woman narrowed her eyes. "Well, just head 3 miles down Harlan Road. You'll see a red barn. Can't miss it." Jordan nodded his thanks, sensing he wasn't welcome to linger. As he stepped back outside, her parting words followed him. "Be careful. Some places in Rock Hill don't like being disturbed." Meanwhile, back at the farm, Emily's head slumped against the wooden post. Her wrists were blistered from the ropes. She didn't cry anymore. She cried all her tears over the years. Since the Millers adopted her at age 7, they'd used her more like a farmhand than a daughter. Her story had faded into a town myth. No one asked about the quiet girl at the back of the barn. They just assumed she was broken. But she wasn't. Her mind was sharp, her memory vivid, and her heart still stubbornly held on to one truth. Jordan was out there, and he'd find her. It had been 2 years since she escaped the town, 2 years since she met him in Austin. She never told him the full story, just fragments. But he knew enough to make him love her fiercely, enough to marry her in secret, and enough to believe her when she whispered, "They'll never let me go if they find out." They did find out, and they came for her, dragged her back to Rock Hill under the guise of a mental breakdown, told the authorities she was dangerous, unstable, It wasn't hard for the Millers to twist the truth. Not in a town like this. But tonight, something changed. A soft hum cut through the silence. A car engine approaching. Emily's eyes fluttered open, blurry from exhaustion. At first, she thought it was her mind playing tricks. But then the headlights illuminated the edge of the field. Someone was here. Someone real. Someone who hadn't forgotten her. Her lips trembled. Jordan. From behind a curtain inside the farmhouse, Charlene Miller peeked out. Her face went pale. Because the man stepping out of the car wasn't just anyone. It was the man from the magazines. The one she never believed was real. And he was walking straight toward her barn. Charlene Miller's hand trembled as she dropped the curtain. Troy! Duke! Someone's here! Troy grunted from the kitchen table, still scrolling through the video of Emily tied to the fence. So what? Probably another Jehovah's Witness. Charlene's voice turned cold. Number, it's him. The man she married. Jordan Pierce. Duke scoffed. You mean that billionaire guy? That was just some fairy tale she made up. There's no way. Look outside, Charlene snapped. Both boys moved to the window. Their laughter vanished. Jordan's tailored coat shimmered under the moonlight as he marched across the yard, past the rusted tractor and empty corn bins, toward the barn, toward Emily. Troy cursed under his breath. This isn't good. Outside, Jordan's boots crunched over the gravel. He wasn't just angry, he was focused. The kind of quiet rage that only comes when someone touches the one person you swore to protect. He rounded the barn, heart thundering, flashlight beaming ahead, until the light caught something. A figure tied to a post. Emily. His breath caught. Her eyes were swollen, her skin bruised, but the moment she saw him, her face lit up like sunrise after a storm. Emily! He rushed forward, untying the ropes with trembling hands. It's me. I'm here. She collapsed into his arms, weak but alive. I knew you would come, she whispered, her voice cracked but certain. I'm sorry it took so long, he said, holding her close. I'm never leaving you again. From behind them, the barn door creaked open. Step away from her, Troy growled, holding a shotgun. Charlene stood behind him, her face twisted with fury. You can't take her. She belongs to us. We raised her. She's ours. Jordan stood, shielding Emily behind him. You don't own people, and starting now, she's done suffering. You think money gives you the right to just waltz in here and take her? Charlene spat. No, Jordan said, pulling a folded document from his coat, but a marriage certificate, a restraining order, and 3 sheriff's deputies pulling in behind me? That gives me every right. Flashing lights cut through the dark. 3 squad cars rumbled up the road, tires skidding on dirt. Charlene's confidence shattered. You called the cops? Duke gasped. No, Jordan replied calmly. The governor did. He's on my company's board. When I told him what happened, he made some calls. And now, you're going to face what you've done. Sheriff Maxwell stepped out of his vehicle. Hands where I can see him. Charlene, Troy, Duke, you're under arrest for false imprisonment and assault. Emily clung to Jordan as the officers cuffed her captors. Justice had finally found its way to Rock Hill. The Pierce estate in northern Austin was beautiful, but to Emily it felt more like a museum than a home. Vaulted ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows, expensive art she didn't understand. Everything was pristine, polished, quiet, too quiet. Jordan had brought her here to recover, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong. Not in these silk sheets, not with a man like him, not after everything she just endured. She stood frozen in the doorway of the guest bedroom, gripping the doorknob like it might bite her. Jordan noticed. You don't have to sleep in here, he said gently. You can be wherever you want, or I can take you somewhere else. Name it. Emily turned slowly. I haven't had a bed in years, she said. Not a real one, just a cot in the barn. Sometimes a blanket on the floor when they were in a good mood. Jordan's jaw clenched, but he kept his voice steady. Then this one is yours now. No one gets to hurt you here. She stepped into the room, hesitant, like someone stepping into a memory that wasn't hers. Why do you still want me? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. I'm not the girl I was in Austin. Something else now. Jordan crossed the room and stood in front of her. You think I fell in love with who you were pretending to be? I fell in love with the fire behind your eyes when you talked about wanting a life of your own, about writing, about building something from nothing. I'm not that strong anymore. His breath caught. Her eyes were swollen, her skin bruised. But the moment she saw him, her face lit up like sunrise after a storm. Emily, he rushed forward, untying the ropes with trembling hands. It's me. I'm here. She collapsed into his arms, weak but alive. I knew you would come, she whispered, her voice cracked but certain. I'm sorry it took so long, he said, holding her close. I'm never leaving you again. From behind them, the barn door creaked open. Step away from her, Troy growled, holding a shotgun. Charlene stood behind him, her face twisted with fury. You can't take her. She belongs to us. We raised her. She's ours. Jordan stood, shielding Emily behind him. You don't own people. And starting now, she's done suffering. You think money gives you the right to just waltz in here and take her? Charlene spat. No, Jordan said, pulling a folded document from his coat. But a marriage certificate, a restraining order, and 3 sheriff's deputies pulling in behind me? That gives me every right. Flashing lights cut through the dark. 3 squad cars rumbled up the road, tires skidding on dirt. Charlene's confidence shattered. You called the cops? Duke gasped. No, Jordan replied calmly. The governor did. He's on my company's board. When I told him what happened, he made some calls. And now, you're going to face what you've done. Sheriff Maxwell stepped out of his vehicle. Hands where I can see them. Charlene, Troy, Duke, you're under arrest for false imprisonment and assault. Emily clung to Jordan as the officers cuffed her captors. Justice had finally found its way to Rock Hill. The Pierce estate in northern Austin was beautiful, but to Emily it felt more like a museum than a home. Vaulted ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows, expensive art she didn't understand. Everything was pristine, polished, quiet, too quiet. Jordan had brought her here to recover, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong. Not in these silk sheets, not with a man like him, not after everything she just endured. She stood frozen in the doorway of the guest bedroom, gripping the doorknob like it might bite her. Jordan noticed. You don't have to sleep in here, he said gently. You can be wherever you want, or I can take you somewhere else. Name it. Emily turned slowly. I haven't had a bed in years, she said. Not a real one, just a cot in the barn. Sometimes a blanket on the floor when they were in a good mood. Jordan's jaw clenched, but he kept his voice steady. Then this one is yours now. No one gets to hurt you here. She stepped into the room, hesitant, like someone stepping into a memory that wasn't hers. Why do you still want me? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. I'm not the girl I was in Austin. I'm something else now. Jordan crossed the room and stood in front of her. You think I fell in love with who you were pretending to be? I fell in love with the fire behind your eyes when you talked about wanting a life of your own, about writing, about building something from nothing. I'm not that strong anymore. Yes, you are, he said. You survived things most people couldn't even imagine, and you're still standing. Emily shook her head. Barely is still standing. Later that night, Jordan found her sitting alone in the garden, barefoot, staring up at the stars. She didn't hear him approach. Used to sneak out to do this, she said when he sat beside her. On nights when I knew they'd pass out drunk, I'd tiptoe outside and just look up. I thought maybe someone out there saw me. I did, he said softly. She smiled for the first time in days. You didn't even know me then. I still saw you. I just didn't know where to find you yet. They sat there for an hour, no words needed. She wasn't healed, not even close. But for the first time, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. And in that stillness, Emily made herself a quiet promise. She would learn how to live again, not for the headlines, not for revenge, but because she finally could. The following morning, Emily woke up to the smell of cinnamon and vanilla drifting through the hallway. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The satin sheets, the warm light spilling through the window. It felt like a dream. But as she sat up, her chest tightened. Because even though the nightmare was over, the fear still lingered. She slipped out of bed quietly, padded into the hallway in her socks, and followed the smell. Downstairs in the open-plan kitchen, Jordan stood in sweats, flipping French toast with his sleeves rolled up. When he saw her, his face lit up. "You're up early, or did I wake you?" She shrugged. "The smell reminded me of something. Not something good, though." He nodded with understanding. "French toast was my mom's peace offering after every fight with my dad. I guess we both have ghosts." Emily sat at the island, picking at a strawberry. "You talk about her like she's still around." "She's not. Died when I was 20. My dad raised me after that. Did his best, but we weren't exactly close." There was silence. Not heavy, just full. Jordan set a plate in front of her, and she hesitated. "It's okay if you're not hungry," he said. "We can just sit." But she picked up the fork and took a bite. Warm, software sweet, and for once it didn't make her stomach turn. "I had a nightmare," she said suddenly. Jordan looked up. "Last night?" She nodded. "They tied me up again. But this time, you didn't come. You don't have to be afraid anymore, Em. You're not alone." "I know," she whispered, "but my mind doesn't." Later that day, Emily wandered through the long hallway upstairs and found herself standing in front of a locked room. It had no name, just a thick wooden door and a keyhole. Something about it made her stop. Jordan found her there a few minutes later. "That room's been locked since I moved in," he said. "What's in there?" "Old things, my mother's boxes, her piano, journals I haven't read. I guess I wasn't ready to open it." Emily hesitated. "Can we?" Jordan stared at the door, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, maybe it's time." He retrieved the key and turned the knob. Dust danced in the air as the door creaked open. Inside was a room frozen in time. Plush rugs, vintage books, and a grand piano draped in a faded shawl. On the mantel sat framed photos of a smiling woman with Jordan's eyes. "She was beautiful," Emily whispered. "She had fire," Jordan said. "She didn't let people tell her what she was worth." Emily walked over to the piano, ran her fingers along the keys and pressed one gently. It let out a note, soft, unsure, but still alive. Jordan turned to her. "Want to stay in here a while?" She nodded. "This room feels safe." So they stayed. Two broken hearts sitting in a room built on memories, learning how to feel whole again. A week passed. Emily had started sleeping better, eating more, smiling sometimes. She even stepped outside the estate a few times, once to a bookstore with Jordan's assistant Tasha, and once on her own, just to feel the sun on her face without someone yelling at her. But the piano room, that had become her favorite place. Each morning she'd slip inside, press a few keys and let her fingers wander. She didn't know how to play, but the music didn't care. It welcomed her anyway. One morning, while dusting the shelf beneath the piano bench, she felt something catch her fingers, a hidden compartment. She slid it open. Inside was a stack of old papers tied in a faded blue ribbon. She glanced over her shoulder. The house was quiet. Jordan was in his home office. She untied the ribbon. The papers were letters, handwritten in soft cursive, addressed to Jordan, but never sent. They were from his mother. Emily's hands trembled as she read the first few lines. "Jordan, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't say it out loud, but I want you to know the truth, about where you came from, about who we were." Her eyes narrowed. "What truth?" She read further. "We took you in when your birth mother disappeared. I never told you because I loved you as my own, and I didn't want you to feel unwanted. But you were born into something bigger, Jordan, something dangerous. There are people who would use you for what's in your blood, just like they used her." Emily's breath hitched. She flipped to the next letter. More fragmented lines, names she didn't recognize. Something about a trust, a child with a rare genetic immunity to certain diseases. Something about a disappearance in Wyoming. Emily's heart raced. This wasn't just family history. This was a secret that had been buried to protect him. She stood quickly, knocking the bench over. Papers scattered across the floor. That's when Jordan appeared in the doorway. "Emily?" His voice was soft, but his eyes locked on the letters. She froze. I didn't mean to. I found them under the piano. He stepped inside, picked up one of the pages inside. I forgot they were still here. Is it true? She asked. You're not her biological son? He nodded slowly. Number she adopted me when I was 2. My birth mother vanished. No trace. Why didn't you tell me? He looked at her, eyes full of something deeper than pain. Because I've spent my whole life trying to feel like I belong somewhere. I thought if I buried that truth deep enough, maybe I would. Emily stepped closer. Jordan, I know what that feels like. To be taken in, but never truly accepted. But you made me feel safe, loved, like I wasn't a mistake. He reached for her hand. And you made me feel seen. They stood there, surrounded by old secrets, realizing they both had pieces of themselves they never asked for. But maybe, just maybe, they were meant to find each other because of those very pieces. Emily folded the letter and placed it on the piano. Some truths hurt, but some made you brave. That night, the wind howled louder than usual, rattling the trees surrounding the estate. Emily sat curled on the couch, wrapped in a thick blanket, the fire flickering beside her. The letters had stirred something inside her, a deeper connection to Jordan. Yes, but also a haunting reminder that no one escapes their past completely. Jordan walked in, holding 2 mugs of chamomile tea. Still can't sleep? She nodded. Feels like something's coming. Like, we're not done with them. He sat beside her. You mean the Millers? I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe it's just me trying to prepare for something, just in case peace doesn't last. Jordan didn't try to reassure her with false hope. He'd learned that survivors don't need cliches. They need honesty. If they try anything, he said, they'll face everything I've got. Emily looked at him, her voice fragile. You don't understand them. They don't attack from the front. They sneak in through the cracks, through people you trust. Jordan set his mug down and nodded. Then we closed the cracks. The next morning, a security alert went off. Tasha burst into the library where Jordan and Emily were reviewing documents. We've got trouble, she said. Your father's lawyer called. The Millers filed a motion. Jordan frowned. They're in jail. What kind of motion? Petition for reversal, claiming Emily was mentally unstable at the time of your marriage. They're arguing she was under undue influence. And get this, they've hired a private psychiatrist to back them up. Emily stood frozen, her breath caught. They're trying to undo our marriage? They're trying to paint you as unfit, Tasha said. And if the court buys it, they can launch a civil suit for defamation. They're going to try to bleed you both dry. Jordan's jaw tightened. Number, that won't happen. Emily turned to him, the fire back in her eyes. Then we fight. No more hiding. No more hoping they'll go away. They won't stop until they destroy me. Jordan nodded. Then we don't give them the chance. That evening, Jordan brought in his personal attorney, Gwen Cordero, a former federal prosecutor known for tearing apart false testimony. She arrived in heels, a sleek navy suit, and a folder thick with evidence. I've dealt with families like this before, Gwen said. They'll try to manipulate, twist timelines, and gaslight the court, but they left a digital trail. And those videos they posted of Emily, they're about to regret ever recording them. Emily sat quietly as Gwen laid out their strategy. Every lie would be dismantled, every claim countered. But something deeper stirred in her. Anger. Righteous anger. Not just for herself, but for every foster child who'd been discarded, abused, or labeled trouble. I want to testify, Emily said suddenly. Jordan turned surprised. Are you sure? She nodded. I'm done being silent. If they want to drag me back into the courtroom, then I'll drag the truth right in with me. For the first time, she didn't feel like the girl tied to the fence. She felt like a warrior sharpening her sword. The courthouse in Rock Hill was packed. The air was thick with tension. Friends, family, and curious townsfolk had gathered, some whispering support, others gossiping in judgment. Emily stood before the judge, her hands steady despite the pounding of her heart. This was more than just a legal battle. It was a fight for her dignity, her future. The Millers' attorney launched into their case, painting Emily as fragile, unstable, and easily manipulated. They played edited clips from the videos Troy and Duke had taken, twisting her pain into proof of her supposed unfitness. But when it was Emily's turn to speak, the courtroom fell silent. She told the story no one wanted to hear, the endless neglect, the cruelty, the isolation. She spoke of years spent wondering if she was ever going to be free. Jordan sat beside her, holding her hand. His presence was a shield. Then came the turning point. Gwen Cordero called witnesses, neighbors, teachers, even a former social worker who confirmed the Millers' history of abuse and deception. The evidence was overwhelming. Troy's smug facade cracked. Charlene's eyes darted nervously. Duke shifted uncomfortably in his seat. By the end of the day, the judge ruled in Emily and Jordan's favor. The restraining orders were extended. The Millers were ordered to pay restitution. And, most importantly, Emily's marriage was declared valid and binding. As the courtroom emptied, Emily felt a wave of relief wash over her. This was not just a legal victory, it was a rebirth. She looked at Jordan, tears streaming down her face, and whispered, "We did it." He smiled softly. "Number, you did it." The road ahead was still long, but Emily knew one thing for sure. She would never let anyone tie her down again. The courtroom victory was only the beginning. Outside the walls of justice, Emily faced a different battle, healing the wounds that no judge's ruling could erase. Back at the Pierce estate, days blurred into quiet moments, filled with cautious hope and painful memories. Jordan stood by her side, but he knew words weren't enough. So he arranged for Emily to meet with Dr. Lena Morris, a trauma specialist renowned for helping survivors reclaim their lives. At first, Emily resisted. Talking about her past felt like reopening fresh wounds. But slowly, through tears and silence, the walls she'd built around her heart began to crumble. One afternoon, as they sat in a sunlit therapy room, Dr. Morris asked, "Emily, what do you want most right now?" She thought for a long moment. "To believe I'm worth more than the pain I've carried. To be free, not just from them, but from my own fear." Jordan watched quietly as Emily shared her story. The shackles of rejection, the loneliness of feeling unloved, the deep yearning to be seen as more than a failure. Outside, spring was blooming. The garden Emily had tended with hesitant hands was coming alive, much like she was. And slowly, as days turned into weeks, Emily found herself daring to dream again, a life built on her own terms, filled with possibility, not chains. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Jordan took Emily's hand. "We fought the past," he said. "Now let's build the future." With a small, hopeful smile, Emily nodded. For the first time in her life, she felt the courage to believe in happy endings, not because they were handed to her, but because she earned them. Months had passed since the storm of court battles and heartbreak, but Emily Grace Pierce was no longer the frightened girl tied to a fence in Rock Hill. She stood tall now, confident, radiant, and fiercely determined. In a sunlit room overlooking the Austin skyline, Emily unveiled her new project, the Grace Foundation, named not only for herself but for every child trapped in silence and fear. The foundation's mission was simple yet powerful: to support foster children, survivors of abuse, and those cast aside by families who forgot them. Jordan stood beside her, proud and unwavering. "This is more than charity," he said. "It's justice rewritten." Emily smiled, her voice steady as she addressed the small crowd of donors, survivors, and volunteers. "I was told I was a failure, a curse, someone who would never rise. But today I'm proof that love, courage, and truth can break every chain." Her story had come full circle. From the darkest corners of a neglected farm to the heights of influence and hope, she had reclaimed her life, not as a victim, but as a leader. That night, as they watched the city lights flicker, Jordan took Emily's hand. "What's next for us?" She squeezed his hand back. "Whatever we want, together." And for the first time, Emily believed it. No chains, no curses, just a future written by her own hand. Emily's journey from pain and rejection to strength and purpose shows us that no matter how dark our past may be, we have the power to rewrite our future. Her story is a powerful reminder that true courage comes from facing our fears and choosing to rise above them. If Emily's story inspired you, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to our channel for more incredible true life stories of resilience and triumph. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update.